Welcome to today's interview. I'm pleased to introduce Dr. Tim Peck, a candidate running to represent Indiana's 9th Congressional District. Dr. Peck comes to this race with a unique blend of medical expertise, entrepreneurial initiative, and grassroots commitment. He holds a Bachelor of Arts in Biology from College of the Holy Cross and earned his medical degree at New York University School of Medicine. Afterward, he completed a residency in emergency medicine with Harvard Medical School, serving as chief resident at Beth Israel Deaconess Medical Center in Boston. He and his wife relocated to southern Indiana in 2020, settling in Clark County to raise their family while engaging with the issues of their community. From his time as an emergency room physician to his work founding healthcare technology ventures as a Democratic candidate for Indiana's 9th District, he has emphasized a bipartisan, listening first approach, reaching across party lines, fostering civil discourse, and focusing on practical solutions rather than purely ideological battles. With that background in mind, we'll explore Dr. Peck's vision for his district, how his medical and entrepreneurial experience shapes his approach to policy, and how he plans to serve the people of southeastern Indiana if elected. Dr. Peck, thank you for joining us. Now let's dive in.
I appreciate it, Derek. Thank you for having me.
Please tell us a little more about yourself that I haven't already covered.
Well, as you said, I'm an ER doctor. I am a physician, and I live in a healthcare desert, is one thing that is pretty important to talk about. As you said, when you talked about it, we came to Indiana. I became a resident in 2020. As you were saying, been here for a while before that. My wife was born here. And so I've been coming here for a while before I became a resident. You know, I chose the place to live was New Washington, which is a rural community in Clark County. And our hospital system there, which was in Charlestown, closed down about 10 years ago, leaving us in a place where it takes 40 minutes by car to get to the nearest hospital. My across the street neighbor, his wife passed out. He had to perform CPR, and it took 45 minutes for a police officer to show up, and 15 more minutes for an ambulance to show up, and then lights and sirens getting back to the hospital. It takes, when I left the house to come into the office today, see my wife and think about her, there might be an hour and a half in between a 911 call and her. And so that's the community I live in. And I've tried to serve that community. I now work in it's called a standalone emergency department on the kind of right on the outskirts of that whole community so that people can come to me there and I can stabilize them when they're in real danger and then send them on into town, into Louisville or wherever they might need to go, because we don't have a hospital. That's the next best thing. And I get to treat my neighbors that way. So, so the answer, what you might not know about me is a little bit about, I am an emergency doctor, but that's how I practice here in rural Indiana.
That kind of sounds like a old school approach to medicine. That's kind of refreshing to see that actually coming back a little bit.
It's literally the best job I've ever had. To tell you the truth. I've had, and you gave my credentials, my medical credentials. I've done these big name things at these world-class institutions, which was amazing to get that training. But this job, I get to cross my legs and talk to people and understand a lot more about them, talk about their families, talk about things like smoking cessation, and talk about what's their first step going to be when they leave this emergency department to quit. Who do they need to call to hold them accountable? Talk about, their discharge plan and how are they going to get those medications that I'm prescribing? Because believe it or not, about 50% of people, when you prescribe a medication, even pick them up and get them and use them. So, I get to have those full human conversations, and it's been absolutely incredible to do that. So, best job I've ever had.
What prompted you to run for Congress in the 9th District?
I mean, healthcare is a huge part of it, right? It's where that experience I just told you about the 9th District and seeing the fact that we just don't have the resources that we need. But I think that extends into so many other things. There's a lot of resource kind of glut going on in Indiana 9. And I think that's a large part of the fact that we have one party rule here, that we have a lot of voter suppression, and that we have a lot of suppression of speech going on at the national level as well. So national and local level, and all that together is really what drove me. My background, as you said, there's entrepreneurial experience. I started a telemedicine company and a telemedicine private practice that helped patients in nursing homes to reduce unnecessary hospitalizations and save Medicare over $100 million with that initiative. And that was before telemedicine was a thing. We really started working on that at around 2009, 2010. Laws had to be changed to be able to make telemedicine reality. And that's what brought me to DC, where I worked for years on bipartisan legislation with Republicans, with Democrats, to make telemedicine a reality in this country, just in time for the pandemic, when all of a sudden it was used at great lengths and saved millions of lives. It was a lot of work, and it's not just me. Obviously, there's dozens, if not hundreds, of people working on it, and big coalitions. And I learned how to put together coalitions. Learned how to work with conservative think tanks, moderate think tanks, independent think tanks, liberal think tanks, to work with them, work with bringing the patient advocacy groups and the insurance company advocacy groups in the same room, and getting them to sign on to the same letter, and making the legislation. It's called redlining, where you're just constantly getting feedback to say what has to be tweaked, words, single words, etc., to make it so that another interest group will sign on. And I don't mean interest group in terms of corporate interest group. I mean like the Michael J. Fox Foundation that represents Parkinson's, or the Alzheimer's Association, or the AMA, which represents the doctors, or to get all of these different people on board, which allows you to go and talk to Republicans, talk to Democrats, and say, hey, look at all the people who are behind this, and that this would benefit, including benefiting people on the ground and humans and patients, to get those people to support it. And so a lot of the legislation I worked on was co-sponsored by, and even co-introduced and co-authored by Republicans and Democrats.
If elected, what will your top 3 legislative priorities be, and which one do you plan to push the hardest in your first 100 days?
Yeah. Healthcare, education, workers' rights are definitely the top 3. Healthcare includes reproductive rights. Healthcare is a human right. Women's right to choose is a human right. And that needs to be protected. So I think as a physician, yes, but I also gave you my background as a policy expert in healthcare, as a person who's built businesses in healthcare, private practices, been able to contract with various pieces of healthcare, just been so involved with every angle of it. I think I've become an immediate voice and expert in that world, and someone that even as a freshman, older, more experienced Congress people will turn to, because I'll have that information. And so, want to introduce dozens of bills around making sure that we can make the change that we need in healthcare, and wherever that might be, as we move toward healthcare being a human right in the Constitution, not just in morality. So, that's a big thing I think I'd push on. Universal pre-K is a very large push of mine. I wrote an op-ed on that in the Bloomingtonian, if you want to take a look. I think it's the best investment that we can possibly make with our money here, with our federal dollars. The ROI is enormous. 15 years later, when people graduate from high school and they have lower prison rates, lower pregnancy rates, lower drug rates. They have higher high school graduation rates, high rates of going to college, higher rates of finishing trade school. It's just, it's incredible to give kids a fair shake by letting them hear all the words and be part of education at an earlier age. So that's a big thing that I'd like to get through and push hard on. And then third is workers' rights and ability to organize, ability to fight for what you need for yourself as a worker, whether that be a better wage, a better healthcare plan, a better work environment, And I feel that that is a free speech issue more than anything, that unions should be able to use their voice as one. And, we live in a state that tries to crush unions with its laws. I think a lot of those can be overturned at the federal level if we go up over it and say unions have the right to have their First Amendment speech rights honored and be able to speak as one to get what they need. Collective bargaining.
The 9th District includes cities like Bloomington, New Albany, and Batesville, and rural communities. How would you address the differing needs of urban, suburban, and rural communities in your district?
Yeah, you have to find the issues that everybody agrees on, which is an insane thing to say in this day's age, right? Like, everybody agrees on. And I think what everybody agrees on is the First Amendment, is our freedom to speech, our freedom to assembly, our freedom to be, to say what we need to say. And so, I was at the No Kings protest here in Jeffersonville. My campaign headquarters here is in Jeffersonville, just down the street, and Warder Park. And there were 2,000 people there giving a speech, talked about free speech, as we were doing it. And those people were completely engaged in it. And then I also read the Rightward blogs every morning, something that is mentally taxing and wouldn't suggest it for everybody. And I need a break sometimes when I do it. But most mornings I read it. And, what I see there is people upset about the Epstein files, even though they're, far right. They go against their own party and against Trump on that, saying we need release of information. We need access to information, which again is a free speech issue. And then I saw them getting mad about what happened with Jimmy Kimmel, which is, being suppressed of his free speech, even though the things he says are completely antithetical to the things that they say. And so I see, for instance, these things on the right around, open carry is my right. It's not really a Second Amendment right. It's a First Amendment right for me to say this is what I believe in. You hear that from a lot of these rightward blogs. And at the same time, we're out there having the largest protests in American history across the nation, coming out from the left. I think there's a unifying message there across everybody on either side of the policy, but also urban, suburban, rural is there. And then also economy, obviously, as well. Like, these tariffs cut across rural, urban divides. Rural wise, I live on a farm. We have soybeans. Soybeans are crushed right now because of the tariffs. And we can go into specifics around that and where Brazil and Argentina come into play there and what Trump has done, but also Argentinian beef problem that we have. And then that's happening there. And then also small businesses kind of that require and depend on certain goods to run their business are getting crushed themselves too. So consumers at the end of the day seeing prices go up, jobs being stagnant in terms of turnover, and even showing some signs of decreasing in general. Economy and free speech are a way we can bring people together across the aisle. These are not party issues.
Aaron Houchin currently holds the seat. What would you do differently if elected, and how do you measure success in your term?
That's great. There's two questions there. So Aaron Houchin, I've been to hundreds of political events at this point. And I'm not talking Democrat events, right? I'm talking bipartisan events, talking community events that have a political presence, such as a county fair. I've never once seen Erin Houchin at any of them. Never once across the entire district. She does not show up. This is playbook 101 for a lot of the, Trump kind of sycophants that are out there, Trump people who are kind of following on his footsteps to win, right? I don't really feel like I lost to Aaron Houchin the last time I ran when I was the Democratic nominee. I lost to Donald Trump. And I don't take that very personally, right? People came out and voted for him, pulled down and voted for her. I don't see many people out there going, I really got to get the polls because I need to vote for Aaron Houchin. She's the one for me, right? She doesn't represent anybody. She doesn't show up. She doesn't listen. Her constituent services aren't that great. And so I think the number one thing that I would do differently is show up. And you know that I have a podcast that reaches a lot of people within Indiana 9 through Project Next. That includes shows like Dr. Tim, and I even have a doctor and a priest walk into a podcast, which I love that name. And that's actually Scott Aaron Rogers came up with that name, by the way. I wish I did, but I won't take credit. And he, with that, I get to speak to religious groups right within my district that I may or may not align on what we're talking about, but we want to hear from everybody and what their views are. And so I go to, right word debates and, events when I'm invited. And so it's not about going to where it's safe. It's about going to where people are going to ask the tough questions. And Aaron Houchin just completely has avoided that. So that's, I think, would be the number one difference there. And, great success was that every Hoosier has healthcare by the time I'm done in Congress. Success would be more people have healthcare, better coverage, more affordable coverage, aren't going broke because of it, than have it today. And I don't mean just returning to what it was before Trump took office and we repealed Medicaid and Medicare, on November 1st, people taking away their SNAP benefits, which is healthcare. I don't mean just that and getting back to status quo. I mean getting to a place where more and more people have coverage.
Inflation, cost of living, and wage stagnation are front of mind for many voters. What specific economic policies would you support to help working families in the ninth?
Yeah, I mean, the number one is tariffs, right? It's just reestablishing the job of Congress, which is to hold the purse. Congress currently has completely abdicated what it has to Donald Trump and to the executive branch and said, you can do whatever you want. That's not how this works. And that could be reversed immediately with a Democratic Congress in place and or even almost Democratic Congress with more moderate Republicans in place. It's really a place that, as well as the farmers especially get hurt more and more and base of the Republican Party gets hurt more and more by these, I feel like that is a place where Congress can use its power to take that back. So I think economically, that's number one. Number two is affordable housing. We just underinvest in housing in this country. We don't have enough housing, and that hurts a lot of people. But who I hear it hurting the most is those people graduating from school, whether that be high school or college or trade school, and going out into the workforce and looking at the astronomical costs of homes and saying, how am I possibly going to get a 20% down payment on this thing and get my first starter home and figure out a way to get into it? Because that's how we build individuals, build wealth and comfort and the American dream in this country is through investing in their homes and then passing that on to their children or downsizing once they've gotten the equity in it and using that to retire or taking another loan off of it in order to pay for their kids' college or improvements in their own home. That's like how the system works. And we cut that off completely to millions of, millions, tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions of Americans right now, and especially people in Indiana 9, especially those graduating from IU and Hanover and IUS. It's tough out there. It's a tough time right now, and it's been a tough decade or two. So as prices gone up, and that includes healthcare, which is one of the major reasons for people's deaths. And reasons for people going personally bankrupt. It includes healthcare for small businesses, not being able to, again, have a way to kind of collectively bargain to get a fair healthcare price for their workers that a huge company would, right? These huge companies have cheaper healthcare than the small businesses do because of they strike deals with the insurance companies. So we need to figure out a way to make sure that those small businesses get the same benefits that those large companies do, because otherwise they can't compete. Cost is an issue, and there's just obvious ways to get it down. Just increase supply for housing, take the tariffs away. These things don't work.
Glad you were talking about healthcare because that's our next question.
Okay.
Healthcare access, mental health, and prescription drug costs remain major challenges. What plans do you have to make healthcare more affordable and accessible for your constituents?
Yeah. So making it affordable, there are immediate actions that can be made. Um, and that's getting rid of the corporate bloat. Right now, your dollars your tax dollars, including your Medicare dollars that goes to Medicare, uh, most of that money, a lot of that money, is going to corporations, going to shareholders, going to Madison Avenue media companies that are trying to sell you drugs into your home, are going to executives, right? That money should go directly to the patient care and doctor-patient interaction and those people who are actually trying to help you. And so how do we do that immediately? And, the larger issue is how to make sure that that money goes to the right place. And there's a lot of work to do. Immediately, you can get rid of prior authorization. It should be illegal. It's not something that is in any way useful to anyone except for making more money for a company. It gets in the way of what the doctor and the patient know that is needed and says we're going to delay your care and therefore increase costs because they're worse off for longer and therefore will get worse and it's harder to get them better. I had someone in North Vernon at an event I was just at who came up to me and he does not have use of his legs. And he couldn't he needed a stress test on his heart. And, the way you do a stress test is by walk on a treadmill. And if you can't walk on a treadmill, you get medication to make your heart beat fast, like as if you were exercising. Well, they wouldn't pay for the medication. They wouldn't pay for the medication. And so until he failed the stress test, the exercise stress test. And so he said people literally lifted him up and he had some use of his legs so that he could barely move on the treadmill so that they can register it and his heart rate not go up enough to then say he failed that he needs to go to the next level of getting the medicine. That is insane. That is insane. And so that's another example of the government inserting itself into your exam room and being there when they shouldn't be. So take that away, take that bloat and make a good experience. Again, making it so that advertising is not the way that we consume our medical products, but instead the patient physician interaction is where you learn the information of what is best for you. Technology also plays a bit of a role there to assist on everyone's decision. Um, but having pharmaceutical companies put most of their money into advertising is antithetical to what we need as a country. And again, making sure that our money goes to the patient interaction. Are you familiar with PBMs, pharmacy benefit manager systems? Um,
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. And for those who aren't, it's if you want to go down a rabbit hole on the internet, learn about pharmacy benefit management systems, these things definitely should be illegal. Some states are trying to make them illegal. And what they do is they are purely a middleman for when you go to the pharmacy and try to get your medications. They are purely a middleman between the insurance company, the pharmaceutical company, the pharmacy, and you. And they just work to make good deals as well as they can. And then they keep the profit on those good deals for themselves and don't pass the good deal on to you. And it's insane that they exist. There's just a company that figured out how to make money, and that's it. Bring no value to people. And so these things don't even have a category of business, and they need to be licensed, and more so, they need to be controlled to the point that they don't exist anymore because they're terrible for people. So there's a lot of places where you can make cuts immediately to the corporate influence of healthcare, including the corporate influence of Medicare. That's one thing people don't realize, that if you expand Medicare, which I would like to do but expand without changing these corporate influences, you're just expanding the corporate footprint as well. Like when I, as a physician, get paid a by Medicare, it's not Medicare that's cutting the check. They've outsourced that to Blue Cross Blue Shield to do the work, right? And so money goes to that insurance company. Even I'm talking about straight Medicare, original Medicare, no insurance company, no Medicare Advantage, no Medicare supplement. That check, part of the bloat that exists is that the insurance company is the one doing the work. So, um, you know, and how they're doing it and taking their for-profit kicks. So it's there's a lot of places where we need to make changes immediately of making sure that money goes to people, not to corporations.
Is possibly a way to deal with all this is go to a single payer system?
Yeah, I think so. There's these terms, by the way: single payer, universal health care, Medicare for all. You know, these are all various terms that mean really different things, actually, and we get them confused. We use them. Even politicians will jumble it up and use whatever that they want. So let me tell you what I believe in instead of picking across these different words. I believe that healthcare is a human right, that everybody in America deserves healthcare. I also believe that healthcare should be provided to people in the way that they want, that unions fought for their healthcare plans that are excellent. Many of them are excellent. That you you as a veteran, thank you for serving, get a healthcare plan where everything is paid for all the time, and you fought for that. Some people buy into a healthcare plan because that's where they want to put their resources to have private insurance to be able to cover their benefits. All of those things should be allowed, but there should also be a public option, a public benefit that anyone can go into so that we all can have healthcare, and we all should have healthcare. It's cheaper for everybody to do that in the long run. Now, there's also Medicare for all, which is the idea that we only have Medicare and you don't have any private insurance and you're required to have it. That has been shown. The upfront costs of that are between 17 and $40 billion, depending on who you ask. Bernie Sanders' plan was 17.5 million when he was running, straight from his mouth. That's how much it would cost. That means there's a ton of taxes that need to be put toward that up front, which again, as I talked about, getting stuff done in DC, raising taxes like that across the board for people is just unpalatable for so many. You sometimes, I've seen this number thrown around 70% of people want Medicare for all. No, 70 comes from a poll where it's 70% of people say that everybody should have coverage, and that if Medicare was extended to everybody, would that be a good thing? Yes. And then you say, would it be a good thing if there were no private insurance? Plummets. And then would it be a good thing if you know that your taxes have to be significantly raised or raised at all? Plummets even more. It's the program itself is not something that is actually that popular once people understand what it really does. Another thing you hear is a problem around every other country has single payer health, or one payer, one insurance company, government run insurance company paying for healthcare. That is untrue, right? They all have something. It's true that America is messed up and those other 32 are doing it better, where they have an option for everybody, but still not everything's covered. And so you need private insurance. In Germany,
I was going to mention that. Yeah.
In Canada, you get private, physician. It's great. Physician, hospital care is covered. Each province is a little bit different. But for the most part, those are covered. Stuff in the middle, there's all these other costs that aren't. There are countries where you can buy health insurance to get out of the public benefit because it's better, right? You're paying up for it. There's Switzerland where the whole country is on private health insurance that you need, not on public, right? So all these systems are different, and there's this idea that's talked about that is not necessarily telling you all the facts, that there's no private insurance every other country. That's just not true.
Couldn't we just tax the bejesus out of the rich?
Yeah, that would be It's one way of going. Again, if we could get those taxes out of people and put them into and help this wealth gap, and be able to do that, it would be great. My thoughts are that the wealthy have money to invest, and that's how they make more money. We need to tax them in such a way that makes them invest into the social good things that we care about and that we need, such as environmental energy, right? The big beautiful bill was a healthcare bill, yes, but it really was an energy bill in a lot of ways. It made it so that drill baby drill, and that people who have um, that you only get taxed at 20% of your money for putting it into certain investments, including oil companies, whereas it made it really hard to invest money into environment. And so it just changed what people invest these dollars into. So your tax code and the way you use taxes is by helping get that money into society for the greater good of all of us. And that means taxing the wealthy, but doing it in such a way that it encourages global good.
Talking about global good, infrastructure often lags in rural areas. Which
Hmm.
infrastructure projects in the ninth do you believe are in most in need? How would you secure federal funding for
Sure.
those?
Again, two questions there, but the first is I live in farm country. I live on a farm. I do not have uh, internet access other than a dish, um, and it's just bad, right? Especially when people come home from school and work, and get online. It's moving super slowly.
It's
Um,
dial up, pretty
yeah,
much dial up speeds.
it's sometimes worse, right?
Yeah.
And so, infrastructure there is incredibly important. Gets to a question that I didn't fully answer before around mental health, opioid addiction, etc. You need these things to level the playing field so that rural populations can get access to the healthcare that they need in terms of mental health and addiction health, because there's just not enough out there to serve everybody. And so, telemedicine again is this thing that we work so hard on is a great piece there. So that needs to be invested in. Everybody needs it. Um, how you get this done in an infrastructure, right? Is a is an act called the PRO Act, is one that I'd love to talk about. This is an act that's just been on the shelf that once Democrats have control of the House and Senate, this would be introduced and passed even with the filibuster, because a lot of moderate Republicans like this, but the leadership won't introduce it. And what it does is says, if you are getting money from the federal government as an infrastructure company, you're building roads, bridges, dial up, wire and ether, and you're building that, you have to have certain labor practices to be able to receive it. You have to make sure that the people who are doing the work get their fair share of dollars and that they're treated well. It doesn't say it has to be a union shop that you get, right? That you gets this money, but it basically says if you're a union shop, you'll hit these metrics. So everybody else do your job too and get there. And I think that same mentality can be used across the board. It can be used for healthcare. It can be used for if you're an insurance company that's putting too much money toward, executives and shareholders, etc. Well, then I'm not giving you my Medicare dollars. Sorry, you're not using them. If you're not using them right? We'd have no teeth on our current rules to say this is how you need to spend your money. Need to spend it on the patient doctor interaction. And so the same thing goes for infrastructure. That's how we do it. That's how we make sure that workers are incentivized and happy and get the money that they need to retire with dignity and buy homes and send their kids to college.
Now, when you talk about college,
Mhm.
do you think, or in your opinion, should we be pushing? Because there's been this, as I do in our generation, we were told, and millennials were told too, yeah, finish high school, you go to college, you get your bachelor's degree, and the world will be your oyster. And that has not proven true for
Sure.
many, many exennials, millennials coming up through Gen Z now, who's getting older. Do you agree that maybe we should be pushing more trade schools?
Hmm. I believe we should be pushing more options other than college, 1,000%. One of those being trade schools, right? And making pathways to that. I don't believe, however, what Indiana is doing currently, which puts people in apprenticeships instead of things like social studies and getting the basic knowledge that you need to be an informed and good citizen and a good neighbor. You need those classes too. And once you've had those classes hit and completed, yes, and alongside, yes, get into the trades and be able to get that education so that you can be able to productively, give to this world. My father-in-law, he works. He's a farmer, but he also works as a foreman at the roads department, and he's one of the smartest people I know in this world. He's the kind of guy who doesn't use the instructions on IKEA furniture, nor does he use instructions when putting together an entire engine. So, it's incredible what he's able to do and what I've been able to learn from him. And this man benefited from the trades and the trades school organization. Never went to college, and as one of the most productive people in the I know in this world, takes care of his family and made a good life for his family, including my beautiful wife. And so, trade schools are an answer and the right answer for a lot of us, especially in this new environment where you graduate right now from college and you can't get a house and you just spent a ton of money on college and have to pay it back, and you can't even get a white collar job right now because it's stagnant, right? And people lay you off, because you're not represented by unions. And maybe you went to teacher school and you're not represented by unions when you come out, and you are expendable. Like it's college is going to college and leaving college is also about the economic situation that you're coming into and the work situation that you're coming into. So it's not just about one reform, it's about a lot of them.
Yeah. Now talking about jobs, there's a lot of people out there that equate the issue with the job market is they're not there for Americans. They're there for the other people. And I I totally disagree with that. I mean, the jobs just aren't there because of automation. And it's not somebody from Mexico, Nicaragua, Guinea-Bissau, um, the Philippines, China has taken your job. It's because of corporate greed, two, AI/automation. Um, what do you think is the issue with why there are very little jobs out there?
Yeah. So I think you just hit on two questions there again. If I could separate them out a little bit. One is what you directly asked at the end there. Um, Currently, I think a large part of the largest part is the economic uncertainty. And so people aren't firing so much right now, but they're definitely not hiring so much right now. And so there's just no movement. Like people who have a job are keeping a job, and there's just not a lot of unemployment. Often when we see not a lot of unemployment, we're like, that sounds great, but only when there's growth in the economy. And right now, the economy is stagnant. And so you have people just holding on to their jobs, businesses not taking any risks, no real turnover going on. And so you're just staying where you are. And then if you cut someone or they leave their job, they're not replacing those jobs right now, right? In an economic uncertainty, like, oh, that's a cost that's gone. I don't want to replace it. And so we're just getting a shrinking job market in that way, a shrinking ability to go anywhere. A lot of that has to do with tariffs. My wife works for a company that sells baby goods, um, and they're just crushed by these tariffs in terms of the prices. And yeah, they did a very interesting campaign where they literally wrote to their customers saying, "We're passing this on to you." Because we can't survive otherwise. And so if you want to stay with us, we're going to give you some of this cost, and we really appreciate you. And that seemed to to work a bit, and keep them afloat during this time. But the uncertainty is insane right now for companies. You just can't grow in this, and that's the job market. I think the one thing that we saw in the last few jobs reports, which we can't really get right now because the government's closed, by the way, um, on what's going on in jobs. But the last few job reports before that, we saw that the one sector that was growing is actually healthcare. The problem with that is what we're talking about is you do need immigrants to be able to expand healthcare jobs. We don't have enough, literally don't have enough Americans to take care of everyone who's turning 65 and over. It's a million people a year, a day turning 65. It's insane. Or a year turning 65. It's insane how many people. And you just have a population mismatch. So you need to find people who are skilled and will do this work. And we need to have better immigration systems to find the skilled people all around the world who can come and be nurses and be home aides and be physicians and be, radiology techs and whatever it is that we need. Otherwise, we're just going to have a healthcare system that literally collapses.
Talking about immigration, how do you view U.S. immigration policy and border security? What balance should be struck between enforcement, legal migration, and humanitarian obligations?
Yeah, we're obviously not in balance right now, right? There's criminal enterprises and criminal people who are criminals that certainly should be found and leave this country and don't have any place in what we're doing in America to be Americans and live our dreams. Being in America doesn't make you a criminal. First of all, it's a civil issue. It just does not make you a criminal. You are not an illegal alien. You are not someone who should be dehumanized and thought of that way. You are a person, and we need to treat you as such. And just watching, if you're watching these videos and if you're not being fed these videos on your social media right now, older people being tackled, and that priest I just saw, his last name Reverend Black, I think it was, getting shot in the head by a rubber bullet, and in Chicago, and like this, it's bad to treat people this way. You don't take your government and put it toward your own citizens, right? And working on hurting them, just because you're looking for some migrants, right? And so we are way overbalanced right now, if you want to call it that, using your words of balance. It's terrible, and it's not humanitarian.
What is your position on reproductive rights and abortion access, especially given how divisive this issue is in many Indiana communities?
Yeah, abortion is healthcare. Abortion is a human right. I'm an emergency physician. I've treated a lot of women who've been raped, girls who've been raped, and never once in the past did I think about what the government had to say when I was giving my counsel. The government just does not belong in my exam room. This is Tylenol 101, education from politicians does not belong in my exam room. Having vaccine decisions made by politicians does not belong in my exam room. It's along the same lines. Like, just get out of here. Let me do my job. This is healthcare. It's part of the options. And I also see it as a freedom of speech. Like, literally, I have to not be able to say certain things that are needed to be able to treat someone and give them the options that they need to figure out what's right for their health and have those deep conversations. These aren't flippant conversations. I don't know what people are thinking about, but these aren't flippant conversations when you're having them. So when I relate to people, there's someone here in Clark County who is county council Republican, who I was talking to, and he, it wasn't a patient interaction thing. It was a politician talking to me about how his, wife needed an abortion, and he didn't equate that as an abortion because she was having problems with a uterine bleed, and like he somehow thought that was an abortion. That's healthcare. That's the conversations I need to have, and you've restricted my ability to do that with your wife at this point. So that's how I relate to people. Make sure people understand that no single law is ever going to be able to be written that can take into account every single thing that happens in that exam room. So just get out, let us do our jobs.
Accountability often comes up in politics. How will you ensure you remain accountable to your constituents?
079, that's my number. So give me a call, give me a text, and get back to you. DM me, whatever it might be. We're just, we talked a little bit about this earlier, but just trying every which way to get to people through being on podcasts like this, to creating our own podcast and my own podcast, even before running, and with Project Next. And please follow Project Next if you're listening to this. It's a lot of really great, informative stuff going on about local stories in Indiana 9, but in Indiana, Kentuckiana, and the Midwest in general. Really been an incredible, heartening project to be doing, and talking with local voices and highlighting people that never do. Been doing TikTok lives and Facebook lives weekly, showing up, right? And so, I mean, that's the answer. Is accountability is showing up and letting people pepper you with questions, letting you ask me these questions whether I like them or not.
In today's polarized climate, how will you provide civil dialogue and collaboration across party lines? And when will you refuse to compromise on principle?
I'll never compromise on my principles and what I believe. The details of how you get there is all about compromise. And if that means that I have to make a small step today in order to make a larger step tomorrow, I will do that if I have to. And that goes for literally any issue. I was listening to a podcast with Obama just recently, and it was from this month, where he was talking about how he was speaking to Malia, and she was saying, we're not going to hit our climate goals of 3 degrees Celsius, and it's going to be a mess. What's the point? And so he's kind of saying this all or nothing thinking of, well, what if we make it 3.5? There will be floods, there will be fires, there will be maybe political unrest from it, but there'll still be a world, there'll still be a country, there's still things worth fighting for. You don't give up because you don't get everything that you want. And that's a failure for sure on a number of levels if we surpass that increase, so that we have irreversible climate change. But that failure doesn't mean you can't have other successes. And he likened it to Obamacare. Are you just not going to have Obamacare because and you're not going to insure, tens of millions of people because you want everybody to be insured? No, I want everybody to be insured. I am not compromising on that principle. But to get there, I will do the hard work of working with people to get any incremental gain I can have, and try to, bring, as we said, what does success look like? It looks like more people having healthcare than today. And more affordable healthcare. That's what we'll do. So, it's about never compromising on principle, but compromising as a rule in order to get things done, because we're in a government and a country where it's 50-50.
How will you engage with voters who feel disillusioned or believe politics doesn't serve them? What outreach strategies will you use in often overlooked areas?
Yeah, so first of all, we're knocking on 100,000 doors as a campaign, and organizing for that. We're slowly doing 4,000 or so of them right now, and have 800 volunteers. I think it's about 300 of them have said they'll knock doors. I don't have the exact number of them, and so we are organizing them to get out and make that happen pretty soon on a large scale. So there is no door knocking culture here in Southern Indiana or throughout Indiana. The largest Democratic door knocking function last year was about 70,000 doors. That is nothing in comparison to what most races around the country, especially swing districts, do. There's a lot of stuff saying, a lot of people being like, oh, the Democrats had such a great ground game in swing states last year and it didn't matter. Donald Trump still won those swing states. There's a difference about knocking on a whole bunch of doors in a swing state that always has their door knocked on, people who always have their door knocked on, versus here where you're showing up and they haven't had people knock on their doors for 20, 30 years, right? It's showing that you care. It's showing the extra effort that you're going to make those connections. And so we're going to focus on that quite a bit. And it takes a lot of planning and a lot of training of people. And we've done a ton of that work over the last 6 months or so to then explode upon the districts pretty soon.
We've now come to the point where we get rid of these open-ended questions and we go into a rapid fire round of yes/no questions, no explanation needed. So, are you ready?
And it's only yes, no. I'm not allowed to say maybe or sometimes.
Just yes/no.
Oh boy.
Do you support legalizing marijuana at the federal level?
Yes.
Should U.S. government be required to balance its budget every year like states do?
Required?
Yes.
Eventually. So no, like no today, but there's steps to get there. Yeah. No today, but yes tomorrow. Sorry.
That works. Do you support a federal law guaranteeing access to abortion up to viability?
What's the question? Up to viability? Yes.
Yeah, up to viability. Should social media companies be held legally accountable for spreading misinformation?
Yes.
Do you believe the 2020 presidential election was fair and legitimate?
Yes.
Should the U.S. end the Electoral College and move to a national popular vote?
Absolutely.
Do you believe in ranked choice voting?
Yes.
That brings us to the end of today's conversation with Dr. Tim Peck, candidate for Indiana's 9th Congressional District. Dr. Peck's story reminds us that leadership isn't just about politics, it's about people. From emergency rooms to the campaign trail, his message of listening first, finding common ground, and bringing compassion back into public service echoes what so many Hoosiers are craving right now: honesty, civility, and practical solutions. If you'd like to learn more about Dr. Peck and his campaign, visit timpeckforcongress.com or follow his social media channels to stay updated on his events, policies, and community outreach. Dr. Peck, thank you again for taking the time to join me today and for sharing your thoughts with our listeners. And to everyone tuning in, thank you for being part of another episode of Hold 'em Accountable, where we bring real conversations back to politics and keep our leaders, past, present, and future, accountable to the people they serve. If you enjoyed this interview, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe on YouTube or Spotify. Leave a comment below with your thoughts or questions about today's discussion, because your voice matters here. Until next time, this is Derek Holder reminding you to stay informed, stay engaged, and as always, hold them accountable.